Okay, so I'm going to give you a small introduction into the world of privacy on chain, but I'm going to forerun this, and this is going to be a don't want to get banged up in jail take of privacy on chain. The great Hal Finney started work more than 2 decades ago because he believed, as many people around him did, that cryptography could make possible a world in which people have control over the information about themselves, not because anyone's granted them that control, but because they have the cryptographic keys that allow them to have that control. And he's not wrong, but he is naive. Now, it's very likely that Hal was part of Satoshi as a group, or contributed to in the early days, but there's a certain level of naivety that came through the philosophy there, that we are going to be allowed the level of privacy on chain that the cryptography can actually enable for us. Okay, status quo, off-chain, most private interaction that we can have in terms of a transaction is, of course, cash. You pay your plumber in cash, and the idea is, from the regulatory standpoint, that plumber is then meant to reveal what was paid to them at the end of the tax year to HMRC. So privacy is, by default, removed. Of course, the plumber can break the law, put the cash in their pocket, and then put it through their books, but that, of course, has made them a criminal. So the default is the privacy is removed, and what you get in return is you get confidentiality. You trust the HMRC are not going to leak your books to someone or to the world. You trust that your accountant isn't going to leak your books to the world. So you take part in transactions where privacy is essentially peeled away for regulatory tax purposes, and you rely on a level of confidentiality. We're all used to confidentiality as a kind of a status quo. If your health records, you don't expect me to be able to come and read your health records, only the people with the right authority should have access to read your health records. So we're used to sort of working in a world where we're getting confidentiality, we're not really getting privacy. Of course, we don't all deal in cash. We're much more used to having our trusted provider, a bank, and you're doing your transactions through your bank account. And then, of course, HMRC have got a lot more power because they can actually go to that custodian and say, give us all the details of what transactions they've been doing. We don't trust their books. And of course, many people have been caught up by that being revealed. So on chain, we just go to a whole another level of exposure because, of course, an L1 by default is designed to have public state changes. And so that puts us in a very unique position. We don't have the custodian that's shielding what's going on. The transactions by design visible, so you can verify that the transactions have gone down. So we get into interesting situations then, because you've got an ability to do wallet watching. So if you're naive like me, you trot along to the Glasgow Meetup and you give the lovely Callum your wallet details because he goes, oh, let's have a raffle. Here, mint a POAP and we'll have a raffle. So I do. Callum's lovely. I win the raffle, but now he's got my wallet. So what do I do if my company turns around to me and goes, "Oh, we've got crypto payment. You can take your monthly cash in crypto, my salary." Well, then Callum gets to see what my salary is because I've already revealed the wallet. So do I want him to be able to know what my salary is? Do I want him to watch my transactions? So on a personal level, if you interact with people and hand over your wallet, they have forevermore got access to what eventually could be my bank account, as in terms of visibility. So Mr. 100 is a popular wallet to watch because at one point Mr. 100 was collecting 100 Bitcoin per day. As you can see, this was a good day, 2,800 Bitcoin.
Is he still doing it?
Still doing it.
Yeah,
now,
every day.
If we find out who Mr. 100 is, be it an individual or a nation state, because you've got that wallet address, you've got the history of every single transaction. So the scales fall off down, all the way down, and now you know exactly who that is and all those transactions that they've taken part in. So this default privacy is interesting. It's also problematic. So if you're at a capital market level and you're moving large amounts of of coin, you're making big deals, you can actually change the value of a token just by making a big purchase. You can even, some people have even shown examples of changing the value of a token simply by doing price discovery. If you're following who's doing the discovery, people are watching, then you can even affect
Some folk
markets.
shifted the market on Twitter.
You can shift, well, you can shift the market by social constructs. Yeah, you can. So particularly the issue is arbitrage. So if you can see what's happening by watching marketplaces, watching wallets, you can get to leverage mispricing between different ecosystems. You can quickly take advantage. This token's going to change value on this system. I'm going to go take advantage of that by leveraging the difference between two systems. You can queue barge. Front running is very popular. So they put in a transaction ahead of the transaction that's coming through, knowing that that transaction is going to shift price. That person can then take advantage of the price shift and sell ahead of the initial initiator of the transaction. So there's real reasons why capital market players are not going to play these games whilst what they do on chain is so visible. Okay, so people are not innocent of this. It wasn't like, you know, I think the narrative changed. As Bitcoin came out in the early days, there was this sort of discussion of there's a level of privacy, until of course data analysts looking at data exhaust start actually revealing who was behind certain wallets, and then people are like, wait a minute, we've got a level of anonymity, but it's a pseudo-anonymity. As soon as it's stripped away, backwards, ergo you can follow the trail of what's always been done. So you get different kinds of privacy, and you jump to about 2021 and you start to see that people are bringing in on-chain privacy, and in the sort of background we've also got services that are coming on. So for network privacy you can think Tor, hiding your IP. For data privacy, likes of Filecoin. Compute, you've already got Aleo coming up. And then what I'm going to talk about today, focusing on, is actually your DApp privacy. So you've got the likes of Tornado Cash. Now what I want you to think about is you've got two kinds of privacy. You've got your transaction privacy and you've got your settlement privacy. So it is possible to separate two. So for example, you could put in your transactions, if they were encrypted in the meme pool, ordered, and then executed, then you get rid of the idea of front running. So if the order of execution had to be determined whilst the transactions were encrypted, then you can separate that issue. So that transaction layer has a degree of privacy, and then the settlement's visible. Whoa, that's what happened. We can see the transition on the L1 of what the final settlement was. So there's possibilities for building in privacy there. Settlement privacy is kind of coming because of some of the natures of the L2. So what you do is, instead of transacting on the L1, you transact on a different chain, you have a different account, and that main wallet that you're associated with is on the L1. You do your transactions on the L2. Some of them have got levels of zero knowledge, so those transactions are hidden. And then later, it all settles back to the L1 and you can see what has occurred. But what it's doing is it's fragmenting liquidity. So you do not have the tokens on the L1. You've taken them to another chain or to another protocol, and it's fragmenting where those funds sit. So there's no real easy solution that's sort of coming all in one at the moment. So yes, you can do it, but there's a really, really important caveat. You must comply. If you're going to give people access to a privacy layer for them to do monetary related transactions, you're going to have to remove privacy, otherwise you get banged up in jail. So Tornado Cash guys, they weren't just arrested, they're now prosecuted and in jail. The Samurai Wallet guys, arrested and undergoing prosecution. Monero is still available. The coin itself is fine, but they have shut down their P2P exchange because they do not have the setup that allows them to comply with AML regulations. And CZ right now doing his time for his centralized exchange not abiding by AML considerations. You mess up on AML, they will put you in jail. It's clear. 2023, the SEC did 26 enforcement actions, all around AML. 2004, the EU's MiCA that's just come in, it specifically states that crypto asset service providers must comply with AML regulations. What does that mean? How do you comply? You've got a KYC, KYT, KYB, know your customer, know your business, know your transaction. It's no joke. You've got to put these into place. You've got to do deposit monitoring. What if someone on a sanctioned list dumps a load of Bitcoin into your protocol, into your L1, into whatever you're providing? They need to know that that money goes nowhere. Viewing keys. You're pretty much going to have to provide a level of, you strip away the privacy and you return the end user confidentiality, and you hand the keys to the regulatory authority or whoever they assign so that they can see what has gone on in the transaction. Proof of innocence kind of goes back to be, if you extract your funds, well, what if you've commingled those with somebody who was on a sanction list? So now you've got to demonstrate that your funds were never commingled with somebody who didn't comply with the deposit monitoring rules. It's a tough nut to crack, and this is what privacy protocols are having to do. This is what they have to comply with. Okay, it is possible, and most of the privacy protocols do some kind of version of this. So I want you to imagine, I'm going to torture an analogy here. Imagine we all left our shoes at the door, and we put on slippers. Now, shoes identify us. The slippers, you know, you got the fluffy bunny, and you got the grandpa's shoes, and I got some of these nice slip-ons. So you are able to leave your identity, the thing that identifies you, at the door, and step in and adopt a new identifier. So you disconnect your wallet. So my wallet that Callum knows the address of over at the Ethereum group, no longer in use because you step through the door into what they call a dark pool. Now, dark pools are very common in TradFi. Big companies do it all the time. The likes of JP Morgan will get together with 4 other rich pals and do some trading that won't shift the markets because they don't show what's going on until they exit the dark pool. So this is dark pools for everybody. You get your new identifier, you transact with your identifier. If you're lucky, there's really genuine zero knowledge proof on-chain state changes. But beware, just because the term zero knowledge is put in there, most zero knowledge proofs are actually just offering an amazing scalability. They're not genuinely offering zero knowledge. There's a lot of data leak. If you want genuine zero knowledge, the size of the proof is quite large, computationally obscene. So often you're not really getting more than scalability. So you can have zero knowledge state changes, but it's going to cost, which is why we come to number 2. Why is it number 2? Because number 1 was comply, comply, comply. Number 2, if you want to have a privacy protocol, whatever value you offer your customers it's got to be worth it relative to fees. We're back to the good old-fashioned product market fit. Is there anyone willing to pay for the service you're providing? People have got to value privacy to level they'll cough up because you're providing privacy. And then in reality, if you want privacy, you need a large enough anonymity set to actually keep those transactions private. So if I torture my shoe example, if only Mate and I took our shoes off and came in the room, and I come in with an ETH, and he comes in with some Satoshi, and we exchange, and we come out again, and you observe that, we put our shoes back on, and we step outside into the real world. Even I could do the data analytics to say, well, that's what happened inside the pool. So until you start to get big numbers doing exchanges inside a dark pool, data analysts can look at the data sources people extract and actually unweave a lot of what happened inside the pool. The number of people taking part adds to the anonymity of what everybody's doing. If your numbers are small, you don't have a big enough anonymity set. So really what that means is your protocol is going to have to integrate with existing DeFi protocols, because that's where the action is. So you're pretty much saying it can't just be one coin. You're going to have to support ETH and BTC and USDC and whatever your most popular shitcoin is at the moment, and maybe not even compatible coins. Like, you're going to have to put a big pool of supported tokens in there just so you attract people, so that they then can interact with where the action is, which is really the DeFi protocols. That's a lot of demands to be made of a privacy protocol. And of course people are doing it. They're not like, oh, it's difficult, we won't. So they are trying. Okay, so I've recently just finished working with Panther Protocol. I was a technical writer for them, and they are quite far ahead. Greenfield did an analysis of what they anticipate the regulators will require, and they are quite far ahead in, yes, you can get your KYC at the door, yes, deposit monitoring, sadly rate limits is in case somebody's shifting a huge haul and they want to stop them. So if they've overcome the deposit monitoring, they're not on the list yet, but now they're suspicious, so slow it all down. RPC inspection, sadly yes. Viewing key, pretty much has to have. Proof of innocence, that means as you extract, you can demonstrate you didn't get polluted. And then the compliance committee, they're thinking about it. And it goes, I'm talking from my own perspective, not representing anyone here, but it goes against a kind of Web3 philosophy, really, to be doing this, and to the extent of a compliance committee going like, now the DAO has to act as a compliance committee that has to decide who gets to use the viewing keys and when, and there's probably a reason why that's last to come, because it goes against that kind of Web3 philosophy. So the KYC, how's it done? Luckily, let me just check my time. Too bad. Luckily, we've got some good solutions these days. So with Panther Protocol, you KYC with a third-party provider, and then you get all these nice things like the digital identity. So you can go and comply with whatever your regulators demand. Maybe they say, I take my MetaMask wallet address, and I take my passport, and that's all they need. And they pass it through something. Maybe it gets worse. Maybe I have to go to some local office, hand over a fingerprint, and that gets associated with my MetaMask wallet. But Panther Protocol doesn't care. As long as you abide by whatever the KYC is for your region, and the third-party provider will provide an attestation that you comply. They'll say, yes, you're over 18, no, you're not a US citizen, whatever it is that zone you're going to enter, that dark pool you're going to enter requires, then you can do it. And the protocol itself does not hold responsibility for holding your personal details. So you've got that lovely digital identity that you can take with you as you go. Then you take up your new identifier. So in Panther's case, that EOA, that wallet is able to do deposits, but that's the end of it. You've got your KYC, yes. Now you can do wallets and withdrawals, of course, importantly, yes. But now you're inside wearing your slippers, if we abuse that analogy a bit further, with a Z account ID. And what that is linked to is a lookup table. And everybody's got their keys. What they've got is a public version of their private keys. So anyone can go to Z account ID, look up their public version of their keys. Those are very useful. Let's think about an Alice and a Bob transfer. Alice is going to transfer a UTXO. Now you might know that from the Bitcoin world, but the UTXOs work slightly differently under Panther Protocol. So what the UTXO is if Alice takes her MetaMask wallet that has been okay, she's not on a list, the deposits are okay, and she moves them through into her Z account, she's creating a UTXO, a commitment on chain that says, okay, Alice deposited 1 ETH. So on the inside of the dark pool, she gets a UTXO that represents that ETH held by the smart contract on chain. The commitment to that UTXO is done in such a way that only Alice can open that and read it. And what's particularly unique about Panther Protocol is that private key that can read it. The UTXO is locked down with a unique public key. So each time you lock a UTXO, you don't use the same public key. You derive a new public key for her to be able to open it. And that means data analysts can't follow the trail of the same key being used throughout the system, which is another identifier. So she's got her UTXO representing, say, 1E, and she's going to pass that to Bob. What it means is she actually transfers that UTXO's read and spend rights to Bob. The moment it's handed over, she doesn't have access to that anymore. So only Bob can, so she goes up to the lookup table, gets Bob's public key, derives a key to give it spend rights, which Bob can unlock with his private key, and a read private key. And what happens is, as soon as the commitment is made, a message is emitted on chain to go, whoop, that happened. And everyone in the pool is constantly scanning for those messages. If Bob can open that message, bingo, he just got the UTXO. So all the time, people are scanning to say, anything mine? Have I got anything coming here? And as soon as you can, you open it and you've got the read and the spend rights on that UTXO. Now, of course, maybe we want to think a bit about that data trail, that message. She also sends a message to self. So if you need to say to the regulator at the end of the year, what did you do? Well, she's handed over that UTXO, she can't read it, she can't spend it, she can't do anything to it. So for the data trail, you actually send a message to self, so you can always say, this is the asset I held, this is the transfer I did, and you can always build your own trail if you need to, of what you got up to that year. So how does it happen? You've got to verify an on-chain state commitment, you produce a snark. Often protocols would call this zero knowledge proof. Luckily I had a great engineer who was very fierce about differentiating between when they were using zero knowledge proofs for zero knowledge versus zero knowledge proofs for scale. This is used for scale. So one of the things you can do is you can pay a miner to create the proof that your transaction is valid so that that can be committed on chain. Now, what the miners will do is they'll batch them. So it costs you less, and by batching, you actually get a level of privacy, because it's harder to unpick all the transactions in a batch before they're executed and do that whole front-running business. So it's useful to batch in terms of privacy. Not perfect, but useful. Or if you don't want to trust a miner, then you get to DIY. And you do the compute that's required, that heavy computational load, to make a proof, to say this is a valid transaction. The verifier, as part of the contract, will verify that proof, and then you get to do your transfer, your commitment on chain. And if you're not happy with that, if you want to go another layer further, you can pay a relayer. So the relayer will do a signature to that commitment of the UTXO on chain. So they take the proof, they go, okay, this is a valid transfer, this can be written on chain. But instead of you signing that commitment for it to be put on chain, and instead of you paying the gas fee from your wallet, your internal account, your Z account, the relayer can do that. So you've got another layer of privacy, because you can't even see that you've taken part in the transaction in terms of looking on chain, because you didn't pay the gas, you didn't sign that final commit to the tree that's updated that actually does the transfer from UTXO. So it's possible, but be warned. Remember that regulatory comply, comply, comply. It's going to come down to an interesting game of numbers, because what happens at the end of the year is I take my slippers off, I exit, put my shoes back on, and I'm gone, because I have to reveal to the HMRC what I did. In Panther terms, that means like a CSV file. I get a CSV file of all my transactions, I hand it over. But what if 20,000 people are doing that? That now means you're putting your anonymity set, part of that, in the hands of a regulator. And if they've got data analysts that bother, they can now spend the time unpicking the trail and de-anonymizing your anonymity set. And then we get into a game of like, who gets to do it first in the year? Well, I used to live in South Africa, February. That's when I did my tax return. So I would exit in February. But now I'm over in the UK. April. So I'd exit in April. So now you've got this game of like, when are people going to be stepping en masse outside the dark pool and revealing to data analysts, not to the likes of me, but to data analysts, what transactions went on in the pool. So it's very, very twisty landscape that is not easy, and it's all because we're going to be forced to comply. I popped, if anyone wants a copy of the slide, ask Mache, because I put links so that you can go to some of the sources that I used. Personally, what I think is going to happen is we're probably going to end up something more like a custodian that's giving us a self-custody wallet. Not sure I recommend Kraken yet. If you read that article, it says that you have to put your keys in the sandbox in the app. So not quite the stage where you necessarily want to call that a safe self-custody wallet. As they say, it's open source, but they do have caveats on it. But that's where I suspect we might be going because of these demands. Any questions?